What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Jamar, aka Data J, back with another All About the Data episode. And we got a special guest for y'all today. So, for this special guest, we had to have all the co hosts in the building. I mean, we called off work. We made sure we canceled birthdays, wedding.
Let's get out of here.
We didn't do all that, but we had to make sure, we had everyone for Alex, the analyst. I know everyone knows who this is. So, Alex, we just want you to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it. How to introduce myself? I'm Alex The Analyst. I have a YouTube channel. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Twitter now, just as of recently. And I make YouTube videos and content all around data analytics, how to get a job, tutorials, and just everything data analytics focus that I can think of. I make it and then I put it out there.
Alex, I want to say you sound just like you sound on YouTube. That's but I gotta ask, since I convinced you to get on Twitter, how has your Twitter journey been so far?
I've actually really been liking it. I haven't done Twitter for over 5 years, since I had like a personal account and I was posting on there pretty regularly. Then I just fell away from it. And you convinced me to get on there, and I'm happy about it because now I think I just hit 10,000 subscribers. Or followers is what they're called on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I really like it. It's a good community, and it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. And so I'm pretty surprised at how many people are like data related people on Twitter. That was kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, it's a very big community. I'm actually wondering, do you think it's bigger than LinkedIn?
I don't think so. That's just my perception because I've been on LinkedIn longer. Okay. So I've been on there for years posting my stuff. And so I have a larger community over there. But also, I think I've just seen more people, more individuals with a large following, like 100,000 plus on there. Yeah. Whereas on Twitter, I usually see like around the 20 to 40,000 follower range.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any like huge accounts. So my intuition tells me that LinkedIn's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I can agree with you because there's a few data influencers I know on LinkedIn that don't have 100,000 on Twitter yet. There is one that's almost there. Her name's Tanika. She's like 67,000 now. So she's probably breaking the barriers for us data folks. So So it's a growing community. But Alex, I kind of wanted to like get more into your journey and see like where you actually started, in your data career, or like was data your first choice?
Sure. Data was not my first choice. I make the joke, I really didn't even know what data was or what a data analyst was when I first started about right around like 5 years ago. I had no idea what it was. And it wasn't anything that I even contemplated. I was going more down the path of like physical therapy, occupational therapy. I had worked in hospitals, in ERs, and I originally went to school to become a doctor. So I got a scholarship for being pre-med. And so I was going like the nursing doctor route. That was my plan. And so I had a lot of experience working in hospitals, and my plan was never to be anything data related. The closest thing that I knew of that was even somewhat data related was like an engineer, because I knew they kind of worked with data and a lot of math. That was about it. That was the only thing that I really knew. So, right out of college, I got this internship. I was working at a behavioral health hospital. And if you've never worked at a behavioral health hospital, I don't like using the word crazy because they're not crazy, but it's a lot of disturbed. In some way, they're just like, they got something wrong, right? Whether it's, bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. Some people are just suicidal. I was working with that type of population. That's kind of my background. And so I wanted to stay in the area where I was living because I met my now wife, where I had just, met her at the time. But I was like, hey, I really want to stay here. Let me try to get a job. I got a job at a nonprofit. And at the nonprofit, I was working there for about 6 months. And this data data collection specialist and analyst job popped up at the nonprofit. And my wife was like, hey, you should apply for it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? I was like, I don't know anything. I don't even know what this is. It just, I know you need to know Excel and that's it. And so I applied for it and they gave me the job. And I think one of the biggest selling points was that I had built a really good rapport with them over the past several months, and they really liked me there. So when I applied for this job, I knew the people I was applying, like who interviewed me, I knew them. So I was like, hey, look, I've never done this before. But if you give me a shot, I'm going to do a fantastic job, just because my quality of work. And so they gave me a shot, and my whole career and idea of what I wanted to do with my life completely shifted. Not like in that moment, but over the next several months and years, it's completely changed my life. And so, I mean, I know I went on a bit of a tangent, but to kind of go back, no, data was not anything I had ever wanted, thought about, knew about, before about 5 years ago when all that happened.
Okay, so you didn't go on like the traditional going on YouTube and looking at all the data stuff. You kind of just saw this opportunity, and that's how you got introduced to it.
Kind of, yeah. I'm completely self-taught. I've never taken a course in college, never done a boot camp. I just taught myself everything off of YouTube and different platforms. And it was what's that?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. It was right when I had got that data job, maybe about 4 or 5 months into it, actually. We had a consultant come in. We were putting in a Salesforce database to track some of our data. And the guy was like, oh, you're the data guy here. Do you guys use SQL? Do you guys have a SQL database? And I was like, I have no idea what that is. And so that night I was like, well, this guy is really smart. You can tell he's very, very bright. I went home and I Googled SQL. I misspelled it completely, but it kind of pulled up. And I was like, this sounds interesting, querying databases and, writing code. I'm like, this sounds tough though. Yeah. But I started looking on LinkedIn at jobs that had SQL, and I was like, wait a second, this looks like it could kind of lead to something. And so during that time, I was like, I should really start looking at this, because if I want to do this as a career, if I want to kind of switch jobs and switch paths, I should do this. I should start studying this. So I just started going on, like, Googling Udemy, or not Udemy course, SQL courses, and I came on to Udemy. And Udemy was the very first platform that I ever used. I hadn't heard of Coursera yet, but I took this one SQL Udemy course, and I think I was very broke at the time. So $10, like $15 I spent on it was like a lot of money to me at the time. So I took that same course like through 3 or 4 times and just spent like hours and hours digging into it, testing it out, building my own databases on like the free databases you can download. And I just became obsessed with it, to be honest. And that was kind of like the turning point. And so I then kind of went more towards like the YouTube route. I was like, okay, I think I can do this, but how do you get a job as a data analyst? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, is there any people out there who know what they're talking about, can help me kind of, all the stuff that I make now? I was looking for that when I was in that initial stage. I didn't find a lot of help. I actually found more help in like articles. So like I remember reading things on like data science. So how people were getting into data science, I just kind of revamped that and used it for data analytics. But I wasn't finding a lot of great data analyst content out there at the time, about 5 years ago, when I was up and coming and trying to get into it myself.
Yeah. You made a very good, interesting point about taking the same course 4 times. That's interesting. I want to see how people will respond to that when we release this episode. I think that's actually a good idea. And it's actually something that I'm actually implementing now on my relearning of SQL. Kind of just on data camp, just redoing it until it's like in my brain. But I'm going to jump into the show, but I just wanted to ask you real quick. So can we technically call you Dr. Alex the Analyst?
No, I'm definitely not a doctor. I have no degree past a bachelor's degree. So no, it doesn't feel right.
Okay, no problem. All right, so I want to ask, which non-technical skill would you say has been the most helpful for you, like, in your career transition and position now? Like, what was that one that kind of stood out?
The most important non-technical skill.
Yeah, or like non-technical
Um,
skills in general that kind of played a role in your development.
yeah, and I don't know if this is going to be a good answer or not, but the first thing that comes to mind is I think that my personality, my I would say I'm just a very positive, outgoing person, right? I think that has gotten me a lot farther than just about any other technical or non-technical skill. So like organization, I'm not the most organized. I become a lot more organized over the years just due to necessity. But all these other things like that I've talked about or other people have talked about and skills that you need as a data analyst, I don't think I ever started out really great at most of them. I think the one area that I really shined that landed me my first like real data analyst position at like a small healthcare company, or healthcare analytics company. It was just my personality, and I failed their technical interview because I didn't know what joins were when I interviewed, and they told me afterwards, they were like, Alex, we just really liked your personality. We wanted someone who would come in and learn because there's a lot of proprietary stuff that we use. And I've gotten pretty consistent feedback from every job that I've been in. It's just I have a good personality for it. So I would say that has been one of the biggest non-technical things that's gotten me really far in my career.
That's good.
I definitely agree with that. Most of my jobs I've ever gotten were like, hey, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I will learn and sit down and do everything I need to do every single day to figure it out. And they just love persistence,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I dig that.
Okay, so my question for you would have been, what was your interview process was like? But since you kind of went through it already, you mentioned that you didn't really know what a data analyst was. So what about the job attracted you to it? Like, was it the objectives that interest you, or was it the pay, or what was it?
So at first, and there's a whole story behind the first data analyst job because it almost didn't happen. I almost didn't take the job for various circumstances. But the thing that kind of kept drawing me back to say, yes, I need to take this was initially it was the pay, but I also had the forethought. I know because my wife and I had this conversation before I took the job. I was like, this is a kind of job. This is the kind of industry and job and title that I'll be able to increase my salary incrementally very quickly. So I was definitely thinking forward several years down the road. And I was like, yes, they're only paying me like, I think it was 63,000, which was I was like, that's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But if the circumstances around that was, if I took that job, my wife didn't have work at that moment. So we were just going to be on my salary. So I had to say, okay, we kind of had to make that sacrifice of, I'm going to take this, even though we have a better opportunity for her over here, knowing that in 2, 3, 4 years, if I excel in this and I do really well, I could be making $70,000, $80,000, which would just be like insane for us. And so I think the pay would probably be the biggest thing, but also just the type of industry that it was, that I knew I could make a lot more in the next coming years. That was also really attractive. I didn't really understand the technology that much. So the tech and all the other things that were along with that, I didn't really understand it yet. So at the beginning was not really a piece that drew me in. It was mostly the money, if I'm being honest. To answer your question, it was mostly the money.
Yeah, it's all about the Benjamins, baby.
But all about the data, Jamar. Don't say that.
Yeah, it's all about the data. all about the data. But interesting enough that you said 70, 80 80K range. So would you say that's good for like entry level, 70 to 80K between that range?
Yeah, it depends on your location, of course, different countries and whatnot. But I'll speak for the U.S. In metropolitan areas, like, I think, especially the way the economy is going, 60,000 is becoming more standard. If you're making 70, 80 right out the bat, you're doing good, in my opinion. And if you're doing more than that, I mean, I'm jealous, if I'm being honest. That's just phenomenal. So yeah, I don't think it's unheard of though to be able to make that, especially if you have a good degree in your background. But if you're someone like me, just coming off like someone who does not come from this world, like $60,000-$70,000 was like insane to me at the time. Then I think that is a really decent pay to make with the kind of educational background that I have and not knowing that much.
Yeah. Okay. That it's nice to hear you say that, hopefully that'll encourage some people because everyone is, six figured out, eyes on 100K or better.
I mean, I get it. Like, I really do understand, like, there is this almost barrier of if you can get to 100,000, which, I'm quite a bit past that now. It was pretty amazing to hit that point and it felt really good. But for me personally, afterwards, I was just like, all right, back to the grind, back to the job. It wasn't like I didn't ride that euphoria or that high for that long before I really came back to like, all right, it's time to work. It's time to keep working hard and studying and making sure I'm valuable. So it is a good barrier to hit, but it's tough to hit it. It's tough for a lot of people. It's not, doesn't just happen. Like it usually will take several years, and progressively climbing the ladder and or changing jobs to get those salary increases.
Yeah, that's understandable. I'm perfectly fine with that, to be honest. I know that you can learn so much just by climbing the ladder. I want to ask you something else related to a different career path in data, but I'll let Shanice go for next question first.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that the guy asked you about SQL and you didn't know what the heck that was. So was that like the most difficult skill you had to learn in the beginning of your career, or what do you consider that was the most difficult for you to grasp?
No, SQL was confusing at first, but once I picked it up, I ran with it, and SQL is like, it's like my first love. I keep coming back to it, and I'm like, it's like, I don't know what TV shows you guys watch, but I'm like a huge The Office fan. That's like my show. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. I keep coming back to it because I just love it so much. That's kind of how I compare it to SQL. It's like, I can use all these other tools, but SQL is my favorite. So SQL is my favorite, but it wasn't the hardest. By far the hardest skill that I've learned so far would be Python. And I'm really jealous, and I have been ever since I started learning Python. I've been so jealous of people who got to learn like computer science and programming in college. Like if I could go back and change my, like, knowing what I know now, like this is what I want to do with my life or career wise. If I could go back and like study these things in college, I feel like I missed out on so much. And so I had a really tough time learning Python. It took me 6 months just to really understand like the basics. I'm like, still to this day, I'm like, okay, a tuple is what? An array is like, what's the difference? Like I still have to think through those things because they don't come naturally to me. But I've gotten very good at understanding how to use Python. So like I can Google and Stack Overflow with the best of them, and I can figure out how to do really complex things, but I don't know if I like 100% could tell you off the top of my head the basics, but once I get going and I get in my groove, I'm good. But Python was very, very, very tough for me. Much, much tougher than any other skill that I've had to learn.
Oh,
In your experience, they say, what was one of the best resources that you used to learn Python?
There were a few courses that I took, and I'm trying to, if I can remember off the top of my head, I can. They're in several videos that I've made in the past,
Okay.
but there was one that I know for sure that I took, and it was on Coursera, and it was called Python for Everybody by Chuck.
Mhm.
That course, and I originally started taking it for free on YouTube. And then I was like, wait, I'm like really, I'm vibing with this guy. I like how he's teaching. I like how he's doing it. I'm like actually understanding it. And then I went and took the course on Coursera.
Mhm.
That one to me was phenomenal. I've recommended that one several times. And then there was one on Udemy. It was like Python for Machine Learning by Jose Portilla. If you know him, he's a super huge data a creator on Udemy. I took that one several times as well. And I'm the kind of person where if I take a course, I'm going to keep taking it until I feel like I understand everything. So like both of those two courses, I probably went through maybe 3 or 4 times each, which took me several months, but I was just like really determined to learn it well.
Was it hard, like when you take the classes multiple times, is it hard to like go back and listen to the same teacher and like you kind of already know what they're going to say next? And like,
no, I think, and well, here's the distinction I'll make. I think some people, and my wife is one of these people, because me and my wife, very opposite in a lot of ways, is that my wife, if she had to take a course twice or do something twice that she doesn't feel like she needs to do or she doesn't want to go, she would lose her mind. Like it would just be the most annoying thing. And so the difference is like, I like doing that because I'm like, okay, I got like a rapport with this guy. I know how his teaching style, I know what he's already going to teach. So when I come up to certain sections, I'm like, okay, this section is not one that I fully understood. I really need to pay attention, do this and practice it multiple times. And in some ways I would say I kind of have like an obsessive personality when it comes to learning things. Like
in the same way.
when I want to learn something, like I dive way too deep. Like for a completely random example, like I wasn't very good at chess about maybe 2 years ago. And I started reading books. I started practicing. I started doing tutorials, and I would consider myself pretty good at chess just because I become obsessed with things, just because I want to learn them and know them on a more than just the surface level. Like I want to understand the theory behind things. And so I like going back to courses for that same reason. I just become obsessed with learning and trying to figure things out. And it's all a puzzle that I need to kind of solve.
For those who don't know, Alex beat me in chess in like 24 hours.
Oh, that's right.
He didn't even let me live.
I forgot about that. I was not bringing that up for that reason. I promise you. Yeah, no, I remember that.
Oh man.
Going back to what you said about the college course, I 100% relate to that because I kid you not, when I was doing my capstone just now, which was Python, I kept thinking like, why did I not take this class in college? Like, and I had like little like classes that didn't relate to my major, and I had one like a computer class, and I thought it was so cool, and I didn't press into it further. So I relate. I kind of regretted it, but you know,
it's just hindsight. You know, you don't know what's important. You don't know what you're going to need to know. So you kind of like in the moment, you're like, I'm going to learn. I don't need that. I don't need to learn that in depth. I'm just going to do enough to pass it or whatever. Then you look back and you're like, man, I could be so much farther than I am if I had like applied myself or knew that I needed to know it.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, Alex, since you're like getting into Python and things like that, do you see yourself pivoting into or even testing out data science, data engineering?
That's a good question. At the beginning, when I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I didn't know if I wanted to go into data science. I didn't know if or become a data scientist or if I wanted to do data analytics. I tried everything. And I really dove into machine learning quite a bit. And I think I learned a lot. I think I could, even to this day, I could be a data scientist if I wanted to, if I really tried. It's just that's not really what I enjoy. And I'm at the place now in my career where I could choose to do that if I wanted to. But now I'm more at a place where I'm like, I want to enjoy the work I do. I want to progress in areas that I want to progress. So one thing like now that I'm more interested in than anything is probably data engineering. So, in my last job, I was a data analyst, but I worked very closely with our data engineers, database developers, and data scientists. And I was just really drawn to the ETL process and creating pipelines and automating things. That I just loved. I loved it. And then I would work at the data scientist and we would talk machine learning models. And I'm just like, this isn't my thing. It's just not something that really piques my interest. And so if, I've said this before, I'm not going to, but I was like, if I really wanted to, I think I would go data engineering, but I really like what I do. And I like the type of work it is. So I just don't think I'm going to do it. But if I had to choose one, I would probably go more towards the data engineering side.
Yeah, the ETLs in the pipeline definitely interest me too. Not gonna lie, I definitely think I'm gonna give it a try for sure.
Do you know anybody that's taking like the data? I know I want to take the IBM data engineering course on Coursera.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you know anybody that had some success with that?
No, not really. I haven't really dived too deep into the data engineering side, like course wise. But there are several good YouTubers that are coming out and releasing content on data engineering, which is kind of rare on YouTube. But there is one guy that I've watched for data engineering who might have some insight into that. I think it's the Seattle data guy.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the only one I know. And there are a few other ones that I've seen on LinkedIn that are starting to create content, and I've checked them out and they're pretty good. But that's the only reputable one that I can kind of like say I like his stuff for sure.
You know who's really good on LinkedIn? Zach Wilson.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And he actually just recently got a YouTube channel.
Yeah. He did. Yeah. I'm trying to get him on here next, actually.
Zach, he's huge. He's a good personality. But I haven't seen any of his YouTube stuff yet. But I plan on checking it out because he is really big on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I love his LinkedIn content.
Yeah.
So that's definitely somebody you want to follow for data engineering. And Seattle Data Guy. Seattle Data Guy actually has a Discord too. So
nice. So Alex, I wanted to ask you, so for someone that was wanting to transition into the field, what would you say are some of the most critical skills to learn right now to get a job as a data analyst?
Good question. The landscape is definitely shifting. If you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I would have just said, really all you need to know is SQL and Excel, maybe a little bit of Tableau, and that's it. When I say the landscape is shifting, I mean it's just getting more difficult. It's becoming more competitive. You really need to stand out more. Like back when I was doing it, the market was just easier. It wasn't easy, but it was easier. So the skills that I would recommend, and not just technical skills, but soft skills as well. For the technical skills, I would mostly be focusing on SQL, Excel, Tableau, Power BI. If you feel like you can learn it well and create some projects off it, I'd be learning Python too, but I don't think that's one that you need to have right away. There are so many jobs that SQL and Excel, Tableau, Power BI, those ones will get you jobs. Soft skills wise, and I've started to focus more on this because I'm realizing that, maybe not realizing, I've always known it, but I'm just seeing such a huge shift in the fact that there's a lot of people with that skill set. There's a lot of people that have that and have those skills and can do what a lot of other people can do. The soft skills are where people really can shine and set themselves apart in a way that you can't always do on a resume or in a project or in showing off a skill. The resume gets you into the interview, and your personality is what gets you the job, and your work ethic and how you interview gets you the job. So I've been putting more of an emphasis that when I talk to people on the soft skills, more importantly, just how you communicate and your personality. And I hate telling people that they have a bad personality. And that's not what I usually try to tell people, because I have a mentorship where I work with people. But I'm like, I'll try to pretend to be them. I'm like, I am not trying to insult you whatsoever, but let me show you how you're portrayed in my eyes. I was like, so ask me some interview questions, and I'll give them back kind of my representation of their personality. And they're like, oh, wow, that's pretty dull. And I'm like, it kind of is. I was like, but then I'm like, hey, let me turn on my charm and my personality. Let me show you what is really attractive to an employer. And then I'll be like, I'm really excited to be here. I know I don't know that skill. And then when I kind of show them, that to me is becoming so much more important these days, especially with just how competitive it is. Your personality is like, it's just more important than it used to be. Whereas before they were just like, hey, if you got the skills, we'll take you. But now it's just more competitive. So yeah, that's those are some of the skills I think people should be focusing on, soft skills and hard skills. And it's just, if I'm being honest, it's hard to work on your personality and be self-aware enough to understand that you might not be the most outgoing person in the world. It's hard for people to hear, and it's hard to be, like I said, be self-aware enough to understand that and to fix it. Whereas technical skills, you can see your deficiencies pretty easily because you can compare it to others. So that's what I would say for that one.
Yeah. Can I recommend a book for the people? I would recommend How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I always recommend that. You can't recommend that. I always recommend that.
That's the book for everybody. So
that's a good book. Definitely, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That book definitely
sounds interesting.
Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie. Yeah.
But I can honestly say that. Oh yeah, Alex, if you haven't read that book, you have to read it. I mean, you're already good at winning friends and influencing people, but I think you'll love that book still.
Yeah. I like it sounds good.
Yeah. But I definitely agree though. Like the personality thing is, how this whole thing came to be. Like people bought into our personalities. So definitely, I know even like a lot of opportunities get thrown my way just off of my LinkedIn. I'm not like you yet, Alex, but I'm getting there. You inspired me.
Yeah.
But a lot of opportunities have even Google reached out to me, like to have me a part of one of their campaigns. I don't know if I actually made it though. I should go follow up. but definitely agree though that personality is, and I do think that book will help. That book kind of teaches you how to deal with different personalities and kind of soften people up and find their like inner child in a sense. So
yeah, I like that stuff for sure.
So in your opinion, where does a career in data analytics stand in regard to demand fluctuation in the tech market as kind of what we're seeing right now?
Sure. So you're basically saying, is there a lot of demand for it right now, or is it there a decrease in it?
Yeah. Do you think it's something that could withstand the fluctuation as far as, I guess, how it's needed and then sometimes it's not needed? Do you think corporations can kind of go like, can they afford to slim down that area?
The short answer is no. And I work in corporate America, and I've seen it. It is really hard when you start building out a data team to cut data analysts. You can replace them with other positions and try to shortchange it, but those people did not sign up to be a data analyst, and they will start to resent it and not want to do it. A data engineer does not want to build dashboards or dive into the data like that. They want to build pipelines. That's what their job title is. So usually there's in the growing of a data team, there is that fluctuation where they're like, do we need this position? Do we need this position? Let's try to cut it out, see what happens. It usually equalizes to, yes, there are certain positions that you can't really replace or get rid of because that's not what other job titles or people want to do. Data analysts understand that that's their role. Their role is to come in, analyze the data, find trends, patterns, create dashboards, reports for management, stakeholders to do those things. If you ask a data scientist to do that, they're going to be like, this is not what I signed up for. I want to do machine learning. You do a data architect to do that, that makes no sense. A data engineer, they should not be doing that. Database developer, that's not what they do. So there is a demand for it. I've never seen in the past 5 years when I've been really honed in on it, I've never seen a decrease in the actual demand for this position. So, with everything going on right now and the layoffs, and especially at large tech companies, there's layoffs and there's hiring freezes. I just did a podcast on it, hasn't been released yet, but I dug into the data a lot. If you look at all these large companies that are doing layoffs, hiring freezes, et cetera, for layoffs, it's only about 4% of Fortune 500 or large tech companies that have public IPOs. 15% have hiring freezes. There's still 85% of companies that are going about business as normal because they didn't overextend themselves during this really crazy time. So if you're looking at just those big top companies, yes, it's going to be harder to find a job and there may be a small decrease. But across the board, for 85% of companies, they're hiring as normal and they're bringing in analysts as normal. So I'm not really concerned, even with everything going on, that there's a lack of opportunity out there, especially at small to mid-sized companies that are trying to expand their data needs and wants. There's so much opportunity out there. So, unless you're trying to go for Amazon for your first job, which I go for it, but it's going to be hard. There shouldn't be that much decrease in demand, in my opinion. That's just from everything that I've dug into on that topic. I don't see data analysts going away anytime soon.
I would agree. I see a whole bunch of positions opening up for it, for junior, for all type of positions when it comes to that. And then it's also the titles too, like you could be a business intelligence analyst. Like it's so many different. And I mean, I would love your thoughts on this, Alex, because when I look into those titles, I'm starting to like kind of phase out of the job title, because when I look at the requirements, I see Tableau, SQL, Excel for business intelligence. I'm like, it doesn't really seem much different than a data analyst.
Well, the thing is at my company, even on the previous team that I was on, we had visualization specialists, we had BI developers, and data analysts. And all three of those at different companies could do the exact same work. It is possible. At our company, though, because we had all three, they did very specific things. Me as a data analyst, I was working more on the ETL side, but we were diving into data, working with stakeholders. We had a business analyst as well, which again, that one can get muddled in there as well.
And me and J-Bar was just talking about that.
Yeah. And a business analyst, all these titles that I'm saying, all of them could at different companies be the exact same or do the exact same work. Sometimes it really is just the title. Whereas, at my company, since we had all those titles, I didn't work on almost any dashboards at all while I was there. I worked with our visualization specialists to help them understand the data a little better. And then they would build it out, do all that work and release it. But I almost never touched it. That just wasn't my role. So there are a ton of different titles, different variations. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, look, the data analyst title is kind of the more sought after title. It's like, it just is more catchy. It has more, I don't want to say prestige, but people recognize it more than a data visualization specialist. But it is very possible that if you read that job description, they could be pretty similar and you can get fantastic experience doing that for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then transition to, if you really are looking for that title at that time, you can look for a data analyst title. But I say, look at the job description, see what work you're doing, get on a call with the recruiter and really understand what their needs and what this position is going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And you'll find a lot of overlap in what those titles actually do on the job.
Yeah, definitely agree. Glad to hear you say that.
Yeah.
That's what I've been noticing. I'm like, I know I can't be going crazy.
Well,
Right, right. So now my favorite question comes along.
Hit me with it.
I mean, I always ask everyone this for the people. Since I
always,
am always let them know again.
always.
No, I always like to ask because I am one that I do not have a degree. I dropped out when I was 19 and pursued a career in IT at 19 and am doing fairly well with that. So for you that have a degree, would you prefer would it be best to have a degree or no degree? Or for the people that are watching that maybe don't have a degree and like, should I go back to school but don't want to get in debt? Degree or no degree?
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
wait, Alex, I want to add an extension to that question. I'm gonna tease.
Don't be adding no extensions.
I'm gonna tease you a little bit and throw boot camps into the mix.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So and that's a very big subject. And I've done a few different videos on this. So I'll try to keep it short because I could talk on this subject for hours, legitimately. To answer your question, it is easier with a degree. It just is. Even if it's just a bachelor's or associate's, it helps get your foot in the door of getting to the recruiter. Now, once you actually get to the interview stage, I don't think it's as important, but it definitely helps. There's no doubt about it. So if I had to choose, definitely a degree. I have worked with people and mentored people who do not have degrees and have been able to make it and be very successful. So it's just there are barriers for everybody coming from everywhere. Whatever your background is, wherever you're coming from, you will have barriers. Some will have more than others, and the education piece is just a different barrier for some people. But in general, degree is good. Now, should you go back, if you right now are out of high school, you have a high school degree, and you're trying to get into this field, should you go back and get it? It depends on the type of person you are. I would say for most people, if you are driven and you are self-motivated, you do not need to go back and get a degree. I think most people who have that type of self-motivation and can push themselves and kind of create that roadmap for themselves, it is not going to be worth those student loans. It's just not, in my opinion. I think if you spend 6 months really dedicating yourself to studying the stuff and building portfolios and all that stuff, you can land a job without it, and you will have saved yourself tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. So that's my general sentiment on going back. It's really depends on the type of personality you have and like how self-motivated you are, I would say. There's also master's degrees. So some people have a bachelor's and they're like, well, do I need to go back and get a master's? Most people, I'm just going to say no. Even if you're really self-motivated, I don't think you need to. Master's degrees will help you get a job. They will be very expensive, but they will absolutely boost you up in the rankings to get a job. It will make it easier. But again, the cost versus the time versus the reward, I don't see it being there for a lot of people. Then we have boot camps. And boot camps are an entirely different beast because you at least get it. If you go to an accredited college, you have some accreditation behind it. Whereas boot camps is like the Wild West. You got anybody can make a boot camp. I could go make the ATA Alex The Analyst boot camp tomorrow and people could take it and pay me $10,000 and it would be worth nothing to them. I could teach them skills. I could help them, but it'll be worth nothing. And that's how most boot camps are in my mind. But there are a select few that are worth it and are good. But there are very few, and you really need to dig in and be like, what am I actually getting out of this? Am I just learning the skills and then I get the title of, hey, I went to a boot camp? Or am I getting some type of job placement or job guarantee? Am I getting a money back guarantee if I apply to X amount of jobs and don't land a job? Am I getting career coaching? Am I getting a mentor? Am I getting like what perks am I getting out of this? Because I don't think a lot of people look into that or think about those things before boot camps. And so I feel like boot camps are, I don't want to say this take it with just a bit of grain of salt, but I think they're somewhat predatory on kind of selling the dream. Hey, if you take this boot camp, you'll land $100,000 job. And I'm like, that's just not how it works. It's just, and I feel like it's a bit predatory sometimes with how they market and campaign and sign people up who can't afford it, and it really won't help much. So I have kind of a mostly hate relationship, a little tiny bit of love for the boot camp side of things.
I remember you saying that you would take one if you had the opportunity.
Well, that's the difference though. And I did say that, but it was under the premise of if I had the money, and I had the time, which I have never in my life had both. Because when I was broke, I would have loved to done a boot camp if I had the time or the money, but I couldn't afford those things. Those things are really expensive, and I didn't have the time. I needed to work. I was a newly married man. I needed money, so I didn't have the time to take 6 months off, 9 months off to go take a boot camp. Or go back to college and get a better degree. I just didn't have that luxury. So I just had to really grind it out. But there is a good combination in there for some people who have the money, because sometimes they're like $10,000, $15,000 for like 6 months, and have the time to take off. Because a lot of these boot camps are like full time. You have to be in person or online and do like 40 hours a week of like studying. So excuse me. So yeah, if I had the time and the money, I'd take one. But it's not that great of an option for a lot of people, I feel like.
Yeah. One that I like, I haven't taken myself, but Tech System has one now, which I guess I would like theirs. I would take theirs if I had the opportunity, because they're actually a recruiting agency. So they probably do include the job placement with it. But I haven't looked into it for myself. So, but before I get into my next question, Alex, because we're kind of talking about the school and the self-study thing. So kind of just staying on that track, what are some things that you do to like keep your skills going? Like, do you still take courses, or do you just work on projects? Like, what do you do?
Well, my studying and what I do is very different than I think the average person, just because I have a YouTube channel. And so I make a lot of tutorials. I make a lot of projects for other people. I would say that's how I do a lot of my studying these days, is through tutorials. And I'm very good at these skills. I would say I'm really good at these skills. But when I'm making I finished recording my Power BI tutorial series. Not all of them have been released, obviously, but I'm done with them. And as I'm going through it, I'm like, because I dive into them before I record just to make sure I don't miss anything important. And there'll be times I'm like, I totally forgot about that. Like, I didn't even remember that was a thing. And I learned that way because I want to teach people the best that I can. So I dive into things and I study. So that is how I do a lot of my studying. I do still do courses, but just not as obsessively as I used to. I mean, I have to have some record on Udemy or Coursera somewhere for the amount of courses taken. Like, it's got to be, because I've taken hundreds on both platforms. Like, I legitimately was obsessed. I was like, holy crap, these are amazing. And I'm learning so much. I just want to take. But I don't have that time anymore. I have a full-time job. I have 3 kids. I got a wife. I have my YouTube channel. I just don't have the time. So I normally am doing courses like for reviewing them. Like, I just released the meta marketing review for that certification on Coursera. I took a lot of those, like, I walked through it as if I was taking it. So I walked through that course. That is a lot of what I do these days. Again, not everybody's a YouTuber who does that stuff. So if I didn't have my YouTube channel, I still think I would be doing courses and projects to keep my skills well, especially in areas that I'm not currently using in my job.
Yeah. Okay. So are you one of the Udemy folks that finish the course or don't finish the course? And you just
I was just about to ask that.
I will say I have a crazy high completion rate. I probably do like 95% plus I complete. But you
We're
know,
just gonna walk away from this.
there's been a few that I've walked away from only because I didn't like it. Like and then I would go and ask for a refund. I'm like, I didn't like this course. Like, I didn't like how this was taught. I've asked for refunds. I'm not above it. Even today, I don't care if I'm like a billionaire. If I don't like a course, I'm going to ask for a refund. It's just on principle. So there have been very few courses that I have not finished. I've been like, this was not worth my money. I want my money back. But 95% plus, I finish all the way through, and then I'll go back and take it again, just because I'm like, I got more to learn in there. I know there's something I missed. So yeah, I like to complete them.
And Alex, whatever coffee or tea or juice you drink, I need some of that. I need that type of focus. But I want to ask you, because like me coming into the data world, you, Kenji, were like the first two people that I came across as data influencers, and you guys definitely played a big role in my like thought process behind getting into data. I didn't think I was going to become an influencer. That wasn't a part of the plan. but it was you guys that kind of motivated me to like build in public and put myself out there. And I just so happened to become an influencer, but it wasn't intentional. And it's definitely a lot of work, being an influencer, running a community, a podcast, all type of stuff, and a YouTube channel. We run that as well. So what motivated you to become an influencer, like YouTube, LinkedIn, like in the data community? Like what was your motivation or your drive for that?
Yeah, there was no point in this journey where I've ever thought of myself as an influencer. I genuinely haven't. And I get that question a lot. It's like, I've never been recognized. I've never been on the street. I've never been asked. I don't feel like an influencer. I just feel like another guy who likes data. And so my drive was always helping people, and it still is. Like, I get just a huge kick out of people messaging me and being like, Alex, your channel like changed my life. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and you helped me get a job, and now I'm working at this company, and you've changed like the whole career. To me, that is one of my biggest motivations behind it. And so when I first started, before I started my data channel, Alex the Analyst, I had another one called the Berg Source. Like, my last name's Freeberg, is called the Berg Source. And it was just on like reviewing watches. And I thought it was cool. And I was like, let me try this. But I stopped after about 10 plus videos, maybe after like 2 months, because I had no passion behind it. I enjoyed it, but there was no big community or anything that really motivated me beyond that. I wasn't going to get anybody like, man, you changed my life because of that watch review. It wasn't going to happen. And then I was like, when I first started looking on YouTube, there was nobody. I genuinely feel like I was in it alone. And I remember looking back, I was like, man, I wish there was somebody making content on this where I could learn and they could show me how to do it. And I just remember it being so tough because I had to learn from these data scientist people, and I had to like kind of change it for what I needed. It was tough. And so that was how I started it. I was like, I want to be that person for other people they can like go to his channel and learn anything. My goal in the next 2 years is to literally have every single thing a data analyst could ever want for free on YouTube. And that was the motivation behind everything. And so now I'm like reaching I've gone far above anything I ever imagined. My goal, like when I started it, I was like, if I could get like 1,000 subscribers, that'd blow my mind. And then when I hit that, I was like, imagine if I got to 10,000. Holy crap. And now I'm at almost 250,000, and it feels very surreal, but it's the same motivation. It's the same intention. I just want people to have access to learn if they want to learn, and there not be a barrier of I have to pay for it. Yeah. And so, because again, when I started out, I was broke. I couldn't afford to pay for boot camp. I couldn't afford to pay for Coursera until I got my first job. And I was like, holy crap, I'm going to Coursera. I am fancy. But when I first started, like I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
So the influencer thing, I definitely understand why people say that. And they're like, Alex he's a data influencer, he's a data YouTuber. I don't, that doesn't like make me feel weird. I'm just like, it's just not how I see myself. I just see myself as another data guy trying to give back to the community that gave so much to me over the years that I've been, on Stack Overflow, Google, YouTube, Udemy, all those places. I'm just doing my part now because I have that ability in that audience.
Yeah, honestly, I can relate to that. That was the same thing that inspired me to create the Discord, because I was like, there's no community here. And like, I was actually in the middle of the Google course and I took a long break and I was like, you know what? I need some accountability partners. Like I got to do
Exactly.
something. Created the Discord and it actually did help. I ended up finishing the course. But then the Discord blew. We're almost at like 7,000 members now. And it's like going crazy. And I actually say the same thing. I never considered myself an influencer. People just kind of pin that name. And I think it's because you kind of are influencing them,
Yeah.
You're influencing them, whether it's their career path or even motivation. Like some people listen to this podcast and they say, oh my God, your podcast helped, and like to some people, like even these advices, very, very helpful to a lot of people, especially with data being new. And
for sure.
I mean, I first got introduced to tech in 2018 and I never heard about data. It was mainly network engineering, software, cybersecurity. You didn't really hear much about data science, like now it's data everywhere, but it wasn't always that way. So, I definitely appreciate the contributions that you've done to the community. It's an honor to have you on here. I remember when I first asked and I got rejected like a job, like I applied for a job, Alex rejected me.
And it is not personal. I promise you. As I've gotten larger, as my channel has gotten larger, I've had to learn to say no a lot more.
Yeah.
Because my time has just become more invaluable in the sense that I have such limited time. Like, it's rare for me to have an hour or two during the week to just do anything I want to do.
Yeah.
I do spend a lot of time like planning videos and working and spending time with my family. It's nothing personal. I promise you. It's just, I just didn't have the time.
Yeah. No, I figured we would come around eventually. So I'm glad, we got to build the buzz up for you. So now, we have the audience already ready for Alex. When this episode comes out, we're good. But
exactly.
I'm glad we were able to get you on for sure. Let's see, did we have any more questions for Alex today? Oh, I think we have one last one here for you. Would you ever take on a director role?
Would I ever take on a director role? Yes and no. I like to be. I'm a manager now. Like I have a team underneath me of analysts and developers, and I will say I miss being hands-on. I definitely could and would go higher in the corporate ladder. I absolutely would, but I would be hesitant to do it anytime soon just because I feel like I'd be farther away from being hands-on, which I already miss in my current position. I miss being more hands-on. So it would have to be a good role, a really good opportunity. But I would definitely consider it.
I can see it now. Alex the Analyst, Chief Data Officer.
Hey, it sounds good.
It does, but once again, we appreciate you coming on, Alex. Any last advice, tips you wanted to give to aspiring data analysts, even junior data analysts?
Any tips to inspire?
Or any tips in general?
Yeah, I mean, I one of my biggest things is I want people to know that, and I may not say this enough on my channel, and this comes more from the heart than anything, is that if you came from a very poor background, which is kind of what I came from, you need to look in this field because there's so many opportunities for people who did not grow up in wealth or go to the best college or have everything that everybody else has. I want people to say, hey, if Alex could do it, and I know people don't look at that anymore, but if you saw where I came from, you would be like, if Alex can do it, I can do it. That's what I want people to kind of have that mindset of, I'm not going to let my current circumstances hold me back from doing what I want to do just because I feel like I don't fit in or I don't have the right background. Like, you just need to go for it. You need to try it out, give it your all, because anybody can get into this field. Anybody, whether you have a degree or not. And you can be making more money than your family's ever seen. You just believe in yourself and you really put in the effort. That's what I would say. Just as a little tidbit of inspiration at the end.
Yeah.
I like that. That was good.
I do too. I love
We got to give you a round of applause for that one now. Standing ovation. But appreciate you coming on, Alex. Once again, thank you for everyone that tunes into the All About the Data podcast, everyone that's in the Discord, everyone that subscribes to the YouTube channel. You can also check out, we have SQL Saturdays that we host every other Saturday now. We have a Power BI course on there as well. Not to compete against Alex, though. Alex is probably the best, so make sure you go support both. And tune in, subscribe, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter. Twitter is over 11,000 followers now, so appreciate everyone for supporting the Twitter. Our IG is still dead, but we'll bring it to life one day. And thank you guys for tuning in. All About the Data, baby. Peace.